Hi, and welcome to another episode of 10x Marketer podcast. Today, I have Despina Gavanis with me. She's one of the seasoned content creator and an authentic voice in content creation industry. Since there is so much AI being used in almost everything around content, I decided to talk to her and understand her perspective on how to create content and how to integrate the AI tools into the content creation process. So we talked about content strategy, keyword research, finally coming with an output, editing, further editing, and finally making a blog that is worth reading for your readers. So these are some of the strategies that Despino shared, and she is a real expert when it comes to creating content at scale. There are so much to learn and so much takeaways from this episode for anyone who want to scale their content marketing practices and want to integrate the AI tools in right way. This episode is a must listen for you. So, without wasting any further time, let's hear what Despina has to share. Before that, can I request you all to subscribe to the 10x Marketer podcast wherever you're listening from? We are available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube channel.
My name's Despina, and I am an SEO for the last 8 years, maybe 9 years now. I've lost count. And I also focus on content writing, content creation. I'm finding my roots back as a content creator in my recent work, and I've been loving flexing that creative muscle instead of just being in all the spreadsheets that SEO requires. My focus within SEO has been content quality, scaling systems within agencies and within in-house teams, and also on where UX and SEO intersect. And that SEO meets design realm is where I like to play, because I think UX is becoming a much bigger factor within SEO, and it has been for a long time, but not a lot of people have been talking about it. And so it's exciting to see that movement in the market and that recognition of how important users are in that whole process, not just keywords and algorithms.
Thank you. Welcome once again. And I'll start with the first question. You've been working with a lot of big brands, including Hrefs, and you have been a master of scaling the content creation. What is your, considering your expertise, what is your process for creating a content creation workflow that is easy to scale?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So there's two parts to this. There's preparation and implementation. And the preparation is usually where the strategic things happen, like keyword research and content planning. And there's a process there that I follow. But then when I'm actually creating content, there's a very simple system that I use there just to keep me on track. So starting off with preparation, if you don't have a plan that you can follow, then it becomes a lot harder to scale content because you're not really sure what you're doing. You're flying in blind. You're picking topics at random. Maybe you see a competitor's talked about that topic, but perhaps you don't even have a lot of time to do the proper due diligence before you need to implement. So what I like to do is, if I've got the time and the scope on a project, is I like to do end-to-end keyword research, where I map out the entire topic for a website. So maybe it's multiple topics if it's like an authority site that's targeting a few bigger topics. And we map out everything that's relevant to the brand. And also that brand can meet search intent. So those are the keywords that we choose, and we map them out into blog posts, money-making pages, whether they're service pages for a local business or e-commerce pages for an e-commerce store, or feature pages for SaaS businesses, whatever it is. We map that out and map out what it looks like so that they can completely cover their topic with relevance to their brand, right? That's always the number one consideration here. And so when you gather your keywords, you cluster those keywords into potential pages. I also like to take things one step further, because I find that when I'm in the role of a strategist delivering a content plan, the people often implementing it are not SEO professionals. So they struggle to take a list of keywords and to know what to do with that. So I take it a little step further and I offer suggestions and sections for particular pages. So say we've got a blog post that has 10 to 20 different keywords. Some of those keywords might have variations or words in there that could be, targeted in a specific section. So I'll do that. If I'm working with design teams, I also map that to a wireframe so that they have an idea of where each kind of keyword and where sections could fit within a designed page. And that would be, of course, more for like your money making pages with bigger brands that actually have UX designers and design teams in house. So those would be the kinds of things that I prepare in advance as an SEO, so that when it comes to creating content and then matching that to a design and then getting a page live, there are no hiccups along the way of missed keywords not being included in the content, or the content structure isn't easy to design. Those kinds of things really map out that workflow from creating content all the way through to publication. For my own process when I create content, because I work a lot more on blog posts, so for blog posts, I have a very simple process where I'm either researching, writing, or editing, and I try and do a little bit each day. But I do a little bit each day on different projects to give my brain a break, because sometimes when I write, I need to take a little bit of space so that I can then come back and edit it with a fresh mind. So I'll be researching, and I spend a lot of time researching actually, because research is where I find my best ideas of unique content angles. I get an idea of what's been said to death almost, that sea of sameness that we're kind of facing right now. So I do a lot of research, and I spare no expense in that side of things, so that I can come up with better ideas, come up with an angle that I think is original or could help people understand a topic better or think about it in a new way. And then when I get to writing, by the time I start writing, I already know what I want to say and I have a structure in place because of all the research I've done. So then I get into writing, and I try and organize my days where if I'm in a flow, like sometimes I just have all these words that pour out of me and create a brilliant article, and I follow that flow. So if I have that, I will write it out, and it takes me the least amount of time. And I think that's just part of my creative process. Not every writer works this way. And for anyone listening who manages content teams, it's really important to understand the different creative flows your writers have, because not everyone can flow write. Some of them need a lot more structure and guidance. Others are completely more creative and can flow write at any point in time. If they're a professional writer, they've worked on that muscle to be able to put words on a page, and like publishable words on a page, right? Not just using AI to fill in a page with words, but it's more like structuring those ideas, putting the sentences together to communicate something that may not have been communicated before. And that's actually a bit challenging. So when that moment strikes, I follow it, and then I give it a bit of a rest, and then I edit, because your first draft is never the best. Like there are moments when you're creating quality content where like a particular section or a piece of content you were really attached to, like you might have liked creating it, might have had a really great idea, could actually end up being the weakest part of your content, and you have to let it go. So when I'm editing, I am ruthlessly editing it. It's like I single-mindedly focus on, is this the best version of the content that it can be? And yeah, just focusing on making sure that there isn't any fluff, making sure my sentences are clear as much as possible, because I can be quite verbose as a writer. Like I use a lot of words sometimes. So in the editing process, I fix all my mistakes as best as I can. But it always helps if you've got editors in your team that they do another round of edits. I don't think you should ever rely on the editors to do all the editing from like the very first rough draft. I think giving your writers time to do that themselves, because they're the ones closest with the project. So instead of rushing them to just put the words on a page and then pump it out, that's not what content scaling actually looks like at all. And it's also not, writing something with AI, getting your writers to kind of fix it up a little and then pushing it to publish, because there's problems that happen later on in that process, especially when we're talking about content that gets results. Results start at the very beginning with your strategy, and then they continue through with your process, the goal of it, every step in that process should be thinking about what results you can get. So if you've got teams that involve non-SEO professionals like writers, editors, designers, developers, and they're not on board with the strategy, that's where the scalability of being able to publish content that gets results can really fall apart.
Great. So interestingly, during the entire conversation, you use the word AI only twice. When I'm talking to people these days, it is the first thing that they discuss, or maybe that's the question I usually bring in because I'm more AI focused. With AI on the rise, everything is getting AIs, and people are producing content at scale for an authentic brand. How do you manage the quality and speed? Because maybe other people are producing more content than you are, And this is kind of a race that we are in. How do you manage that this is the authentic content and this is the number of pieces of public I want to publish in a month, probably, rather than competing with some other brand or your competitor who is doing 5x, 10x than you are and still stay competitive?
Yeah, so that is a really great question because my viewpoints on this come from my experiences mainly being agency side, but also having now the chance to work with authoritative brands. There's different approaches. If you're an authoritative brand, you can go faster and publish a lot more content without there being repercussions. If you're not an authoritative brand and you start ramping up your content with AI and your content cadence, like the frequency of how many posts you publish, goes up too quick, I think that can be a sign to Google that you're actually using AI, and then it can be a bit skeptical of your content because, how is it possible that a small brand that wasn't able to produce this is now all of a sudden producing a lot of content really quickly?
Yep.
It's kind of like when people build a lot of links really quickly, a negative sign. I think the same is happening with content now because in SEO, you've got to understand that Google has limited resources to understand all the content that is now being published. I don't think we've had this volume of new content being published at any given time. And so it has to come up with a response to it. So for me, it's not about how much content I'm putting out there anymore. It's more about, is that content, will it last? Like, will it survive the next algorithm update? And so that's how I'm approaching it. That's how I'm thinking about I do use AI in my processes, but I don't use it to take a keyword and create a whole piece of content and then publish it so that I can publish, 10 articles a week or whatever it is, because I just don't think that's scalable for the future of a brand. I'm talking specifically about if you're wanting to build a big brand, or even a small brand, but a real brand, a real business, and whatever you implement today, your investment in SEO and content today, you want that to reap rewards into the future. You're not looking for a quick win thing, because there are people in SEO who do want a quick win, like if you're in the affiliate game and you just want to whip up something quickly, earn a bit of money while it works and then try something else after, that's fine too. There's a lot more AI applications for that. But for big brands, say you want to have a business that you're building the foundations of that business today, so that 5 to 10 years from now, you can be an authority in your niche. I just don't think that relying on AI to scale that whole process and do a shortcut process basically is going to help reach that goal. Because I don't know how true this is. Like, no one ever really knows 100% what's going on with Google's algorithm, but I have noticed signs of websites that have been kind of Google slapped in the past, whether it's been a manual penalty or not, like even if it's just you dipped a lot in rankings, they can sometimes struggle to bounce back, even when they're doing all the right things. And it's kind of like, if Google has demoted your website and its algorithms at any point in time, then it probably trusts your brand less than brands that haven't had that happen, right? So when I'm working with clients and when I'm creating content and doing all these things, I'm always thinking about the future, and I'm always thinking about AI's role in that, because yes, it can help with scaling your process, so it takes you less time to do more stuff, but within reason. And so the kinds of things that I actually do use AI for, that I think it's really great for, is actually in the research phase and the editing phases. What a lot of people are using it for is they skip research altogether, they use it to do their writing, and then they try and edit at the end. And I think that is an incorrect process to be thinking about when you're thinking about scaling content, because then you have subpar content. AI gives you the average of what everyone else has already said. So you don't really stand a chance of adding anything new to it. If you want to add something new to it, you have to kind of have that ready before you use AI. So you can't really completely remove that part out of the process. And that part is the least scalable, which is why I also don't think that aiming for like a huge number of posts every month is realistic. You need to match the level of, how much good stuff and how much new stuff and thought leadership you want to be putting out there, how much information gain you want to be adding to the topics you're writing about. That takes time, but it's well worth it. And then supplementing around that with AI. So for example, say you have original data that you want to turn into a graph, or you don't know how to visualize it. You can give that to AI and it can come up with a graphic for you. So that part can be really quick. Say you want to build like a template that needs formulas in Google Sheets. AI can actually give you those formulas and you can speed up that whole automation process in your template. So you're still creating something original. You're still using your original thoughts and you're adding information gain to whatever topic you're working on. You're adding that quality yourself, but you're using AI to help improve that and fast track that for you rather than saying, hey, AI, write a new piece of content on this topic for me.
True.
So it's a bit different in that sense. Yeah.
True. What is the biggest bottleneck for brands who want to scale the content? So
Different bottlenecks depending on the type of organization that you're in. So if we're talking about, in an agency environment where you're working with clients and sometimes those clients are sensitive, like let's say they're lawyers or people who, the YMYL, your money, your life space, where for you to get a piece of content published, it needs to go through the writer's processing, edit processing, the content manager or content lead editing that as well before sending it to the client. And then the client may have, their legal edits, their CEO editing, and there's quite a few rounds of edits. Those edit processes and the amount of revisions that can take is a serious bottleneck in that situation. So the goal that I always set with content teams when we're creating content in that environment is to have an average of less than one revision required. That means most content should be approved first go, but then on occasion, like if we occasionally miss the mark here or there, that's okay. If every single piece of content is requiring a huge amount of edits, then we're not going to be able to meet our KPIs because editing takes a really long time. Editing takes more time than writing in a lot of cases, actually, especially when you're chasing quality content. So that's the first situation. Now, if you're more of like, an affiliate or a solopreneur and you're doing things yourself, then the biggest bottleneck is actually like finding the motivation to create content, actually doing that. If you're not writing about a topic you like, if you're not really good at putting words on a page and you don't know what good content looks like, those things can be big bottlenecks to your success and to that content actually getting results. So a lot of the time it's about skilling up, learning what keywords are right to target, learning what kind of content will rank, and also learning what kind of angles people are interested in. And that's the skill of writing. That's actually a skill of being able to tell a story or being able to create content that people care about.
Yep.
So that is the biggest bottleneck I see there with people who, if they're using AI and they just trust that the AI content is going to be good enough, and then they publish it and then they get no results, then all that effort can be wasted.
True. So you have been a very active advocate of UX and how to use UX to improve your SEO. So maybe people who are more focused on content, they should actually learn from your strategies and what are things that need to be taken care while you are designing your page from the UX point of view to get better results with SEO and content, and maybe put your content across to your readers. You can touch upon that. In parts, you talked about in your initial introduction about this, but you can give me a more detailed answer that would be helpful for my audience.
Absolutely, yes. So UX and SEO actually have quite a lot of overlap as different disciplines. UX comes from design, and SEO, of course, we've kind of made it up, right? But it's not taught in universities. There's no standard way of how to do SEO. Our industry has created the best practices for it, and we all just follow, the leaders in the industry, like brands like Ahrefs, that teach people how to do these things. However, within UX, there's a standard way that is taught in universities and colleges all around the world of how to do that, how to think through that. And it actually includes things like information architecture. A lot of people in SEO haven't heard that before, and they don't know that that's actually the process UX designers go through to design URLs, to design, the whole site map of a website, where pages will live, where information will live on a site. And also that includes navigational elements, internal links, and things like that. It's actually a really huge part of UX design for websites that SEO people haven't heard about. We call it site structure. But then when it comes to actually designing like a navigation layout, where to put your internal links, we only ever think about it from a keyword perspective, not a user perspective. So when you merge the two together, what you end up getting is that the data that each group has, UX designers and SEOs, can actually feed each other, because UX designers make their decisions by talking to real humans.
Yep.
They use techniques like card sorting, which is like every page that they're thinking of putting in the main navigation, they'll create a card, they'll talk to heaps of people and say, hey, group these cards for me. Like, what would you call that group? Where would you group them together in a navigation? And they'll actually get that data to then map out what makes sense for people to easily find information on a website. And a lot of the time, the labels that they're given tend to correlate with keywords. What SEO people do though is they see keywords and they just cram their navigation full of keywords without thinking about how people will then find that information. So being able to merge the user information with keyword information that we get is actually really beneficial for both people, because what an SEO person can provide to a UX designer is user data through like search volume is user data. What are the more popular ways of wording things? That's really important in an information architecture project for a UX designer when they're giving things labels on the website, when they're labeling what the filters on the left-hand panel should be, or structuring, like how people shop. Some industries, like looking at, for example, the costume industry, people look for costumes based on color, sizes, pricing, the theme of it, characters, all these different ways that they're looking for it. And all of those could inform the labels and filtering available in the shop. Without that information, a UX designer would probably be missing some stuff to add there. So that two-way flow of information not only makes better websites that are both SEO and user-friendly, but it also helps both professionals kind of level up in their weak spots, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And I don't see a lot of people, like they're very siloed in a lot of organizations. So my goal is to encourage more of those conversations, more of that streamlined workflow where they help each other out. Like I mentioned earlier as part of my process that sometimes I even provide wireframes for content strategies. So it'll be like a template of a particular page that then would go to a designer or a developer. It's because what I'm trying to do there to streamline the process is to make SEO easily accessible to all the non-SEO people involved in the process.
Okay.
We rely so much on people who don't know and don't understand SEO to be able to implement it. So without us helping them along and educating them on, this is an SEO-friendly wireframe, because first of all, it doesn't get rid of all the content. Second of all, it doesn't have 100 headings with like very minimal paragraphs. Those kinds of things, those micro decisions that they're constantly making and not even knowing that they're doing the wrong thing for SEO, you help give them confidence to then understand what the right way of doing things is, so that they become SEO savvy designers as well in that process, right? So that's the relationship I'm seeing. And of course, the better the user experience, the more that's influencing rankings and the kind of content Google now wants to show. Because why would Google want to show content where people are having a constantly bad experience? Why would it put that at the top of rankings?
True. That's so true. And see, the entire process from keyword research to scaling the content and then UI UX, the feeling that I get from the entire discussion is this is possible for a big brand. So any big brand with a lot of budget can execute the SEO strategy, UX strategy, and also produce content, scale, and keep the quality running. But for a solopreneur or a small team, how do you actually execute the entire process and also get results? Because one thing with 0 clicks and everything else that is happening in AI overview and Google losing its market share, most people are right now putting SEO investment as kind of back channels. It's not something coming at the front of discussion while budgets are discussed for marketing. More focus is on performance marketing perhaps, or getting instant results, because nobody knows the content that I'm producing, what will happen to it in maybe 5 years. And SEO, as you said already, SEO is for long term, it's not for immediate results. But for a small team, for somebody who is running a show with, let's say, 5-member team or even a smaller than that, how do you actually produce some result with content and SEO without worrying about big brand dominating the market? I mean, can they really expect some market share?
Yeah, absolutely. The same process applies. I actually implement this process more with small brands than I do with big brands. Big brands have a lot more red tape, a lot more approvals and people who need to be involved and all that sort of stuff that can actually slow things down. So this process that I mentioned works a lot better with smaller teams because they can execute a lot quicker. The difference is in the types of keywords, that the strategy that you're building out, right? A big brand is going to go for those more competitive keywords. As a small brand, what you should be going for is looking for those gaps. Where is a big brand not showing up? And most of the time, that's going to be low-hanging fruit keywords where they have a decent search volume, very low competition. And even if they have like 0 search volume, but there's like 100 of them that are about the same topic, because what's happening now with augmentation of how people can search and find information is that we're not getting those 2 to 3 same word patterns anymore. We're getting like 100 different ways for people to find the exact same thing. And especially when it's like a long tail query, like a question, and it could be something like, is oat milk good for acne? That can be worded in so many different ways, but it's technically the same question. People want the same answer, right? So even if those keywords, like they only get 10 searches a month each, but there's 10 of them, then that's 100 searches per month for that topic, which makes it a decent topic for you to create content on. And if then you're seeing that big brands, big beauty brands, beauty is a really competitive industry, right?
Yes.
So big beauty brands aren't covering that topic particularly well or at all, and Reddit is ranking at the top. It means that people want answers and they're not getting them through traditional SEO content. So that's a little gap that you can then take advantage of and start there. And if you have like a whole network of those kind of posts, so say you start, and in your first year, you might publish 1 a week. So you have 50 of those articles that only get, 50 to 100 searches per month. But because you're the first person to kind of really do a good job of answering that in a blog post format or even a video format, depending on what kind of content formats your brand is open to and able to easily scale, then you have like those 50 posts, maybe getting 100 traffic per month. 50 times 100 is 5,000 people per month, is not a small number.
Yep.
If you competed on the big keywords, you wouldn't be getting that much traffic by the end of the year, no matter how much budget you put into it. So you kind of start off small. And I think people relate to this through this theory called the avalanche theory, which is you kind of play at your level, that they separate websites into bands based on how much traffic they're currently getting. So Google kind of gives them that same amount of traffic through the rankings that they're able to get. So if you're a small brand, you're not getting that much traffic from really competitive keywords. So you look at the keywords you kind of are ranking for, and you find other ones that are at a similar level that have those, the sweet spot golden opportunities of decent traffic potential, not a lot of competition, and relevant to your brand. And if you find those keywords in that sweet spot, that's what you can start creating content for. And then it's just a matter of, that's your strategy at the start, but then the rest of the process to remove bottlenecks pretty much stays the same, because then you have to get that into production. So you do research, you answer the question well so that you can actually get good user experience and a lot more people linking to you, sharing that content, because it's a niche topic, right?
Sure.
So if you're answering the niche topic really well, then it becomes an information source where people who had those questions couldn't find good information likely on Google, which is why they then go to social media or Reddit or all those other platforms to find what they're looking for.
True. So that makes me interested in your keyword research process. And do you want to define the keyword research process for a small brand? Because maybe my audience are more from the small brands and solopreneurs. They would love to know that.
Absolutely. So our process actually doesn't change small brand to big brand. It repeats more times for a big brand that covers more topics. So basically, if you're a small brand, you're probably going to focus on one topic first. And let's say you sell composting worms, for example. Your topic is not gardening. That is too big. Gardening has a lot of subtopics within it. So you start off with composting or even worms, like worm composting. You start off with a direct niche that you can influence, and you cover that niche end to end. You find all of the keywords relating to your products or your services that directly connect, not sideways. The HubSpot strategy kind of went sideways because they're a big brand, so it doesn't apply to small brands, right? So what you want is to find all the topics that are relevant to your brand and have good opportunities for you to actually show up and get some traffic, play at your level and slightly above, not too far forward. And then once you exhaust that niche, you're starting to build up some authority, then you can go sideways into a different one. So for example, when we're talking about worms and composting, you're talking about soil health. So then you start looking at keywords about soil. But you do one at a time, and you focus on the relevance to your brand, your products, your services, making sure that you're providing as much unique and useful information so your brand becomes relevant to the niche audience that you're serving. And then you expand sideways and do the same thing into the next topic. And that could, even with a very small niche, you could still get 50 to 100 content ideas pretty easily and quickly, even if I've done so many keyword research processes, and there was one niche that I did recently, which is the only niche I can say that I really struggled to find content opportunities for, because it was very niche, so small. And even in that one, we were able to get a list of 50 to 100 blog posts that the brand could create. It's just that would be all they could create without expanding into like the bigger level. In this example, it would be like expanding into gardening, the whole big, topic that they were. So because I've done 500 plus, or by now it'd be about 700 keyword research processes, and that's the only one where I can confidently say that we struggled to get more than 100 content ideas, which means anyone listening to this, you can easily get 1 to 3 years worth of content in your niche if you're doing keyword research right and you're finding those opportunities. It's about deep research. It's about spending the time looking and analyzing keywords, right? It doesn't need to take you 100 hours, but it also shouldn't be a 5-minute process where you just type in gardening into Ahrefs and then export all the gardening keywords, like 2 point whatever million of them. That's not the process. The process is evaluating the intent of the keyword. Like, can your brand meet that intent? And is it relevant to your brand? Those are the two really crucial things about topical mapping that a lot of people don't include in their processes. They don't include the business potential and how useful it will be to the brand to actually rank for this stuff. So when you don't include that, what you end up getting is a lot of traffic that is meaningless and doesn't grow your brand. So you want to find that sweet spot there of what matters.
True. And so other aspect of this is like you've done a great keyword research and your process looks really fantastic when it comes to keyword research. Now, the other important question that most people have is like, how do you cluster those keywords and decide like these keywords or these topics should create a separate blog post versus this should be part of one blog post or should be clubbed into one? How do you really come up with that kind of structure?
Yeah, that is a really great question. There are a lot of different ways people cluster with different tools these days. So you can, like if you've just got an Ahrefs subscription, you don't want to spend any other money, like you're a small business, you don't have the budget for any other tools. My recommendation would be to create your keyword list and then look at the clusters that Ahrefs already has. There's two types. There's clusters by parent keyword, where it looks at the top keyword that they connect to, so like the main topic. And you look at that and treat that, if there's 500 keywords in a group, treat that as a mini hub of content. And then you can extract, the common themes from that. And that's like a low budget way of doing it, but still effective, because Ahrefs does that first level of clustering for you, which is awesome.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is also extracting by terms, which is really great for when you're giving things labels, like what are your topic clusters going to be? So if, you've got a list of, say, 5,000 keywords and there are 400 mentions of a particular word, that might make sense to make a subtopic out of. So you can get your ideas of what subtopics are going to be from that. Personally, I like to always review my clusters manually. Like, I know it takes a bit more time, and I have used other tools. Like, I've used Keyword Cupid, and there's also another one called Keyword Insights. Both of them have clustering features, but there's an added expense to that. So it's for the volume of keyword research I do and the amount of time they save, I pay that money. But for a lot of small operators, it might be out of their budget. But in either case, you end up with a list of keywords that you analyze their intent. Like, worst case scenario, you're really not sure if something belongs together. There's a great feature that I love in Ahrefs for, digging deep between two keywords. It's called SERP comparison. So you put one keyword in, then you compare it to a different keyword, and then it'll give you a percentage similarity. So if the search results are 50% similar, then it's a good likelihood that if, 5 out of 10 of the ranking posts can show up on both keywords, then if you wrote one article targeting both, you have a chance of showing up. If there's like 0% similarity, then one article will not be able to show up on both kind of keywords. So that's, again, like using the same tool. And I think a lot of other tools like Ahrefs have similar features that they're all expanding in, the content marketing and keyword research capabilities. So use the tool that you've already got and make sure you learn about the features that they have so that you don't have to pay extra if you've got a tight budget. But if you want like a specific clustering tool, then check out something like Keyword Cupid or Keyword Insights that specialize in that.
Understood. So the next question is, let's say you started small as a like solopreneur or maybe 2 3 member team. What are the early signs of SEO success? How do you really determine whether you're going in the right direction? Because that is also important. You cannot spend 1 year and then say that no, this is not working.
Yeah. The earliest success is always going to be rankings and traffic, and they are vanity metrics. But when you're in the very early stages of building a brand, those are the metrics that really matter because they're the earliest indicators you have. You're not going to be ranking in top pages or anything like that. But if you're seeing like keywords that you were targeting, your content is now showing up in, the top 50 results. So you're not even like down at 100, you're in the top 50 or the top 30. Then that's showing that Google has identified your content as being relevant to that keyword. You're probably just lacking on perhaps like the topical depth, or it could be brand authority. Like those are the signals that then bump it up higher up the list, right? If you're targeting keywords and you're not really even showing up in the top 30 to 50, then Google's not identifying your content as even being relevant to that keyword. So that might require a content overhaul. It might require better keyword optimization, like doing a better job of using those keywords in your content and getting Google to know about it. So,
but most people end up blaming the backlink profile. So if you are not ranking in top 50, even after writing the content, they would always go and blame that you don't have a lot of backlinks. That's why you're not ranking. They don't question the content quality as much.
I disagree with that take. I think backlinks definitely help with giving you more authority and getting you onto page one. That backlinks makes a difference there. But if you don't have backlinks and you write a well-optimized piece of content about a particular topic, that should show up in the SERPs somewhere. It should be there. I've seen it with small brands. It's just a matter of like, if your brand is so small that it's not on Google's radar, then building your brand's authority, and backlinks are a part of that, but also branded searches are a part of that too, right? So that's like building your brand. That's what that falls into. It's not strictly just getting links. It's about getting your brand known and getting it on Google's radar, because it's not indexing every website anymore. It's not indexing all content. Google's a lot more stringent because of its limited resources with what will make it into the index. So making sure that your content is indexable, making sure there's no technical stuff, of course. That's always step one. But then after that, if your content, like a lot of the time people will target a keyword, but the content is the wrong intent. So that's why it's not showing up. They're targeting the wrong keyword to the wrong page kind of thing, or they have multiple pages that all target the same keyword and then it confuses Google. So those situations, I think, are first in preventing them from showing up in the SERPs. And if you fix that, then it will land somewhere in the top 50 usually. And top 50 isn't even great ranking. It's just confirming that you've got some relevancy to the keyword.
Understood.
And then from there, you build your links and you improve your authority so that you can climb higher in the rankings. Until it settles somewhere. And then depending on where it settles, there's different things you can look at. But the idea is that you start making your content more competitive.
Great. So now let's talk about everyone's favorite, how to actually use AI in the entire content creation process. Maybe you can help me understand the right way. People are already doing it the wrong way, and they are just ruining whatever has been created in past. But maybe you can explain what is the right way, or maybe if you have any framework that can help people use AI in the creation process.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start off by saying I don't think the way I do it is necessarily the right way. And I also don't think there is a right way, because we're all in this creative phase of figuring it out. Right. So there's no best practices. It's all just like, it's like the Wild West days of SEO where people are figuring out what ticks Google. Now we're figuring out how do we use AI to do all these awesome things. So the way anyone is using it, if they're getting success, that's the right way. And it doesn't matter the details of it, as long as they're getting success with it, it's actually working and it works in the long term. So I think a lot of people are very short-minded with their focus on success. And you see case studies like that. Was it Conch House, that website that, if you stopped the graph when they were at their peak, it would look amazing. But then like after their peak and within 3 months, they went back down to like no traffic, right? So always test the viability in the long term of something to see if it's actually successful. Because I think like the The risk we face with AI is that there's an explosion of content right now. And within 5 to 10 years, a lot of that will not be working for most brands. It'll be wasted budget, wasted effort. So my way of creating content using AI, I actually just created like an SOP process for this. So I can send you the link so to share with your listeners, because it's on the Ahrefs website. So it does use Ahrefs AI content helper, but you can use ChatGPT or any other kind of, LLM, really. What AI content helper does that the other LLMs don't, and why I really like it, is that it verifies keywords and intent for you. So if we're starting with our process of finding the right keywords and making sure we're creating content that meets intent so that we can kind of, land high in the SERPs, get a chance of ranking and, having a really good chance of that performing well into the future, then you need to understand how many people are actually searching for a topic. You need to be able to analyze that topic from the intent like that you're able to meet. And Ahrefs AI content helper does that. You give it a keyword and then it can group competitors that have a particular intent. So you give it a keyword and it says like 5 of your competitors have this intent. It might be a how-to guide. 3 of your competitors have this intent. Which one would you like to optimize for? So you choose the one that you want to optimize for, and then the AI content helper then helps you create content matching that intent, which is amazing, because I don't think any other AI tool or even any content editor kind of tool factors in intent in that same way, right? So that's a really easy place for beginners to start, because it can guide them through the process. The tool will help them pick, headlines, find topics, and also it helps you choose headings. Like if 3 of your competitors have a heading about, what is the topic, and you want to include that in there, you can just press a little plus button and add it in as you're building your content structure. So it's a really nifty little tool for that. So the best way of using it, though, is to actually isolate the specific sections that you want to write for, and then create content paragraph by paragraph, like for those sections, section by section, I should say. Because what happens when you rely on AI to write an entire piece of content is that it can kind of lose track sometimes halfway through. The same way. So if I'm using ChatGPT to help create some content, that's how I would do it. Through research, I would select what my headings are going to be, or through using AI content helper, I might have that structure. And then I use AI to fill in the blanks when I need to. Now, I don't ever publish paragraphs that are completely written by AI. I always add something to it that's my own, because I always find that it needs that. Otherwise, it's just very vanilla, generic, mediocre kind of content. AI is really good at coasting in that middle line, creating, the mediocre average response. It's not really good at giving you that little bit of extra. So some examples of how I add extra to it might be, from the research, I might have some data that I want to turn into a particular kind of analogy. Using an example is always really good in content. And I did that with a complicated piece on headless SEO that I wrote. Used an analogy of a pizza and ingredients and explaining a complex topic in a way that non-technical people could understand it. So AI can help, if you feed it enough ideas, it can help you structure them in a way that you can then write about, because a lot of our ideas are unformed. Or if you have a lot of data and you don't know how to visualize it in the best way, it can help you do that. Another way that I like to kind of differentiate AI content, especially when we're doing definitions or something, so typical SEO process would be having like, what is blah, 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 the definition heading, then an opening sentence that starts with blah, blah, blah is, and then explaining it so that it's, Google friendly. And then I like to add the human element straight after. So it'll be something like, at least that's the textbook definition. Here's the human version, or here's the real version, that no one talks about. And then I go into talking like my voice, and adding things that aren't necessarily SEO optimized, because we've done that at the top, but then going into what's more relatable for humans that AI can't produce, because that's where you add your opinion, your expertise, your experience. Like, examples from my client side work always show up in my articles, because that's what AI can't easily replicate. But it's really easy for me to add that there, because I have that in my knowledge bank as a human, right? So it's an AI augmented kind of process. It's not completely outsourcing everything to AI. And so in using that, I've now become much faster and better at isolating ideas that can turn into thought leadership. Ideas that I haven't fully formed in my head,
Mhm.
I can now give to AI and say, "Hey, I've got this idea. What are some great formats that I can share this with? Some shareable formats or newsworthy content angles I can use from this." And it helps do that. And it can also help create content assets that the asset itself is part of why people would care, like a template, for example. Like in writing for Ahrefs, I share a lot of templates for doing specific processes. And those templates sometimes are automated, need, complex formulas if something's not working. Debugging that and troubleshooting that when you're not a developer can take a long time, but AI can do that for you. So you now add something super awesome to your article that people would want to engage with, but it didn't take you hundreds of hours trying to create it, right? So those are the ways that I find AI can integrate. I am very, like, just my process and how I am as a person, I'm very particular about the quality of the words on the page. So I edit those ruthlessly myself. I mean, I do use Grammarly that uses AI, but a lot of the time, I find that it removes my personal touch. It removes my personalization and makes sentences just sound really boring. So my content documents always have like a lot of, the blue underlines that Grammarly gives you for things that could be reworded that don't have to be reworded, but I just ignore because I prefer writing slightly incorrectly and humanizing my content than making it sound like a robot wrote it.
Great. So maybe make some grammatical and spelling mistakes, so at least Google know that it is written by human.
It's not so much spelling mistakes and grammatical errors, but it's about the use of words like actually or really. It's like,
Yes, yes. Fillers that we love as humans, but Grammarly doesn't love them that much.
exactly. And it also tries to edit, jokes or things I put it to be a little bit funny, and then they're not funny. So I'm like, okay, no.
It's all right. So the next question is around EEAT framework, and a lot of people are talking about it. Experience was recently added by Google because of maybe ChatGPT. Uh, do you want to touch upon how EEAT framework help in both content and SEO and in ranking as well?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that I work on with clients when we're, especially small businesses, for example, is actually EEAT, which is we look at what experience do they have that they haven't mentioned. And it's more than just saying you have 10 years of experience in an industry, right? It's actually proving that as well through videos, images, reviews, just showing that you have hands-on experience and skill in an industry. So we always ramp up those trust building factors that prove you know your stuff. That's what experience is about. Expertise, some businesses this applies to and some of it doesn't. Like if you're a local plumber, expertise for that just goes as far as can you fix a broken pipe, that sort of thing, which people don't really care about thought leadership in that space as much. But if you're in a financial firm or professional services, thought leadership can actually go a long way. And so that's where your expertise can really shine by answering a lot of questions that people have. So the way that I differentiate that is, are people asking a lot of questions in your niche? If they are, that's a great opportunity to showcase your expertise. Your authority is something that you build up in a few different ways. One of them is just getting your brand known. So any offline marketing that you do to get your brand known then translates into online marketing because people then go and Google your brand. And the more they Google your brand, the more Google becomes familiar with your brand. And so what starts to happen is when people start typing in your brand, even before they clicked enter, Google will give that autocomplete box, but it'll have a little card of your brand and your brand details there, which means that Google's recognized it as a noteworthy entity that people should care about. So that's one side of authority is about branding. The other side comes down to building your links, building your mentions online. Like, are people talking about you? Are they interested in your brand? That side of things. Like, is your brand share worthy? And so that's the other side of authoritativeness online, at least. And then you've got trustworthiness. All of those signals basically should be leading up to people being able to trust you online. It's unfortunate that there's a lot more scammers online these days and people can't tell what's real and what's not as easily. And so for that reason, Google is very, and it has been for many years, very strict on its anti-spam policies. So the trustworthiness of your website is basically like, if a human looks at it, does it feel like you're a real business? Does it feel like if you spent money on a service or a product on that business that you'll actually get what you're paying for? Is there a trustworthiness there for that? Like, are you a real business? Are you a real person behind the scenes? And so showing that you've got, actual contact details and address, like being visible and transparent with your offline business and bringing that to your website is one of the easiest and quickest ways to build trust. And then the other way of doing that, because that's a quick and easy thing a lot of people can do and can fake, the thing that they struggle to fake with a lot more and more is actually reviews and testimonials and what other people are saying about you, which is why links are so effective, because that's a different format of other people talking about you.
Yeah.
So all of that together. Yeah.
One question that left untouched in your entire explanation is the personal brand of the person who is writing the content, person who is behind the business, like their personal authority and proving their experience. How does that help, and how do you connect two dots? Like one is your personal brand and then your brand as a business.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So you might have, like, in a business, you might have people who have been featured on podcasts or written on other websites. What I like to do in businesses that have that is to create profile pages for each employee who's comfortable being on the website. Some niches, that's not okay. Like, a lot of employees don't want that. But if they're already featured in podcasts and blog posts, what you want to do is create an about page about this person, and you fill it with information showcasing their specific experience, expertise, authoritativeness. And also if they've got reviews mentioning them by name or the results of their client portfolio, things like that. So it's all about them. Your general about page is about your company, and your company is kind of like, its successes are an aggregate of all your staff and your team.
Mhm.
But then if you've got team members that get searched by name, they are building their own kind of authority online. You link to their social profiles, link to the media, like link to the podcast that they've been featured on, or link to the blog post that they wrote elsewhere on this about page for them, so that your audience can find all the places they've been featured. And then that becomes a bit of a credibility boost, both for this team member who's building up their brand, but also for you as a big brand, because if they're featured on like a really big podcast or a really big publication, then you as a brand can say, we've been featured on, the New York Times or wherever it is.
Yeah.
And so it works both ways. Like, the brand supports the individual and the individual also supports the brand. I think if you're just an individual not supported by a brand, then you step into being like an influencer. And that can be quite challenging to break out in that. And I think a lot of that doesn't start with SEO. That starts on social media, video, those formats of content where influencer content can really thrive. But then once you've become an influencer and you're known for certain topics, you can then build a personal brand website where you build into like different topics. And so a great example of that might be someone like Tony Robbins. He's an influencer in a particular industry, and his website covers like all these topics about mindfulness, wellness, personal development and growth, which is what he's known for. But starting off talking about those topics won't make him an influencer necessarily. So it's understanding the dynamics there of where you're at in your growth journey,
True.
Send you the links to some of the SOPs on topics we touched on, and if you want to share them with your audience,
Yeah,
you can do
definitely I'll do that. I'll add them into my descriptions wherever I'm sharing it. Thank you so much, Despina. It was really lovely talking to you. And thank you guys for listening to us so far. Do make sure you subscribe to the 10x Marketer podcast wherever you're listening from. And see you soon.